Hey, everybody, welcome back. I want to start today with a statement that might feel a little lot possibly uncomfortable. And you know what? I'm okay with that because it's going to get us to a great solution. In fact, three great questions. So here it is. Every leader that I have ever coached, right? Every leader I've ever coached, or really even led, has a decision they've already made. They just haven't said it out loud yet. Think about that. Every leader, and this is probably true of you, right? Every leader has a decision they've already made. They just haven't made it public yet. I mean, literally. When I sit down with a lead pastor, at some point in the conversation, a decision surfaces that they have been carrying for weeks, months, sometimes years. Maybe it's a staff member who needs to transition, a ministry that ran its course a long time ago, or a system or a structure that it did fit a church, half of their current size, but it no longer is working. And here's the thing, when it finally comes up, they don't describe it like an open question. They describe it like a verdict they've been sitting on. I mean, the deliberation is over. Like the announcement just hasn't happened. If you're listening right now, there's a decent chance a specific decision came to mind in the last 30 seconds. And I want you to hold on to that thing you're carrying because we're going to come back to it and use it. So today's conversation is really about why capable, smart, prayerful leaders stall on decisions they've already made and what actually gets them unstuck. This is also kind of a setup conversation for three more conversations we're going to have in the next three episodes. So I'm going to release them on the blog as well. I'm going to give you a bit of a roadmap for them all too. So today we're going to kind of intro this thing and let's actually start with the diagnosis because I think most pastors just misdiagnose this problem, this tension, really completely. When you're stalled on a hard decision, the story that you tell yourself is that you need more information. You need more input, one more conversation, another season to see if things, turn around. And listen, that story really does feel responsible, right? It sounds like due diligence. And listen, in the church space, you're a pastor. This is more complicated. But here's what I have seen over and over again. And this is in my 13 years of being a lead pastor and with coaching hundreds of pastors since then. The delay in announcing officially that decision has almost nothing to do with information. What you're really waiting on is courage. And courage doesn't arrive on a calendar. Now, why does this happen so predictably in church leadership? Well, because pastors are relationally entangled by design. That's the job. Like you hired the person you now need to transition. You launched or supported the launch of the ministry that you now need to shut down. Like you baptized their kids. Like you did the funeral for their mom. I mean, proximity is beautiful. Proximity is a gift on Sunday, but it really complicates everything on Monday. I mean, we say this all the time, but church leadership is uniquely different than any other leadership role. It's an organism, but it's also an organization, and they're both directly connected to the mission. So when a decision involves people that you love or a history that you built, your emotions start voting. And listen, emotions vote really loudly, and they carry a megaphone. They almost always vote, by the way, to delay the decision. So you respond the way capable leaders respond. You gather more data. You form a committee. You reschedule the retreat. You pray about it, which is right, by the way. But quietly, you're hoping that prayer buys you another month, another quarter. Here's the principle that I really want you to kind of hold here, okay? Stuck decisions respond to better questions, not more information. And better questions work because they change your vantage point. Really, asking better questions about the decision is probably the thing that's going to unstick where you are right now. Think about it this way. It's like you're standing just too close to the decision. You're reading it through relationships, through sunk costs, through fear of what someone else may say in the lobby or behind your back. I mean, from that position, more information just gives you more to look at from the same kind of bad angle. You ever heard the phrase, it's like trying to read the label from inside the bottle? That's kind of what's happening to you. So the right question can physically move you, give you a different vantage point. It puts you kind of outside of your emotions or above the history or further down the timeline. And it lets you look back at the same decision from a different angle, from a different place. And from that new angle, really the fog clears out. I've watched a decision that stalled for 8 months resolve in 20 minutes just because a better question was asked. So over the next 3 conversations, we're going to dig deep into each of these 3 questions. I'm going to give you the questions now, but we're going to dig deep into them over the next 3 conversations. Okay, first question. What would my replacement do? That question removes you from the center of the decision entirely. And you know what it does? It borrows the clarity of someone with no history in the room. So what would my replacement do? Second question. What would a great leader do? That one puts you back in the room and it asks what conviction and care look like when they act together. What would a great leader do? Here's the third one, the last one. What story do I want to tell? That one moves you down the timeline and asks you to look back at this very moment before you fully live it out. Now, quick caveat. I did not make up any of those 3 questions. They have all come from other leaders and mentors that I've done life with, been led by, experienced, and learned from. But I love putting those 3 together because they give us a very unique vantage point on this moment in time, this decision moment in time. So each of those questions really are going to get a full treatment, right, in the next 3 conversations, whether you do that on the blog or follow along here on the podcast. And I'm going to resist unpacking them all now because they each really do have a lot of stuff to unpack. But what I do want to give you today is something that I did not cover completely on the blog today. And I think, honestly, it might be maybe one of the most useful things that you could hear around these conversations, around these questions. All right, you ready? Here it is. So some of you are listening and you're thinking, Gavin, isn't waiting, sometimes wise? Like, isn't patience a leadership virtue? And here's the answer. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. There are seasons when waiting is the most strategic move that you could make. So how do you tell the difference between wise patience and quiet avoidance? That's a great question because from the inside the bottle, they look and feel identical. Both look like waiting, both sound spiritual, both let you sleep at night a little bit better, at least for a little while. So let me just give you some insights that really to help you decide or know when your waiting has crossed into avoidance. And really, this is like an avoidance audit. If you want to name it, this is like an avoidance audit. So just 3 signs that it's like a red flag, 3 red flags. Here's the first one. You've stopped learning anything new, but you keep scheduling more conversations. Again, I said your instinct is going to be to just get a little more information, right? But if you're not learning anything new, but you keep scheduling conversations in hopes you do, that's a sign. I mean, patience does gather new information, but avoidance just recycles old information in new meetings. So if the last 3 conversations about this decision really produced nothing new, well, you probably are at a place where it's time to decide. The input phase is over, now you're just circling. So that's the first red flag. Second one, the second sign, the people closest to the situation have stopped bringing it up. Think about this. Early on, your staff or your elders, your board, raised the issue regularly. Now they have just gone quiet. And that silence usually means they've concluded you're going to do nothing about it. And so they have just adjusted their expectations of you accordingly. I got to tell you, that is a credibility leak, and it is going to compound. So if there is something that people used to bring to your attention and now they've stopped, you got to ask the hard question, why? And it could be because they've realized you're not willing to do anything about it. Third sign, last one, you feel relief when the decision gets postponed. You got to really pay attention to this one. When a meeting about the situation gets canceled and your first emotion is relief, your gut is telling you what your calendar isn't. Okay, wise patience feels like discipline. Avoidance feels like escape. So run your decision through those kind of red flags and do it honestly. And if any one of those are true, there's a good chance that you are avoiding. If two or more are true, you are definitely in an avoidance mode. And the good news, though, is that naming it allows you to begin to get out of it. So just to be super practical about this, because again, you know, this insight is interesting, but without an implementation, it's just another podcast, right? So let's kind of make it practical for a minute. And here's just a move that you can make this week, and it kind of comes in two parts. So the first part, I'd love for you to name the decision that you're carrying. And you probably know what it is, but write it down. Put it in a sentence, write it down somewhere. The actual decision, like in plain language, no qualifiers, no additions, no, like add it as if, no one's ever going to read it over your shoulder. Just put it really clearly out there. And instead of writing, evaluate the future direction of our student ministry or whatever, write, I need to transition our student pastor. Like write it that clearly, one sentence, plain language, right? A lot of leaders, especially in the church space, want to skip that clarity, but by skipping the clarity, you don't get clarity. Don't skip the clarity, right? You cannot get an answer to a decision that you have not stated clearly. So write it clearly. And then the second thing you got to do, and this may be a very new challenge for a lot of us, you need to say that sentence out loud to at least one person this week, okay? Now, I'm not saying you go to the student guy or whoever you wrote it about, but say it out loud. Say it to your spouse. Say it to a trusted board member. Say it to a coach. I coach pastors all over the world. The number of times that a pastor has said to me, I think I need to, that has led to some incredibly insightful conversations. And I'll tell you what, almost never was the answer, well, go get some more information, right? So say it out loud to somebody. And here's why this matters. A decision that only lives in your head kind of stays negotiable. But the moment that you say it out loud to somebody else, it kind of becomes more real. And realness is what allows courage to build, and that can create momentum. So write the sentence and then read the sentence to somebody else. That's it. That's all you need to do right now. Now, just really quick before we close, I'll just kind of, let me just clearly say what's at stake. And you probably already sense this, but I want doing nothing about this. You got to take that off the table. I mean, every month, right, that a known decision goes unmade, your church is paying for that. I mean, the staff member, everyone knows isn't, working well, it drains credibility from you and from the team. The dying ministry that consumes volunteers and budget and your mission, right? When you don't get rid of that, we don't shut it down, right? Everybody knows and they're watching. And your best leaders, like the ones that you need to keep the most, are watching. And they see your avoidance and they quietly recalibrate what they expect from you. Remember, delay is a decision, but it's also a decision with compounding interest. And the mission is what's going to be covering all those payments eventually. So you probably already know the answer to the question. Over the next 3 conversations, right, we're going to dig into each of these 3 questions and help you understand the nuances and how to use each one of them. But between now and then, do a little bit of homework and come back next time so we can dig in a little more.